Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 6th of May. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with the very latest weather happenings all around your part of Alaska at weather.gov. Simply click on Alaska or go to weather.gov/Alaska, and that will get you to the web page that we've been sharing with you for a long time now. The same as arh.noaa.gov. At the left-hand side of your screen, you'll find links to everything you need, whether that's watches, warnings, and advisories, current weather observations, satellite and radar links, perhaps an update for the ice desk is what you're looking for, and the conditions out across Norton Sound and into the Bering Strait, or perhaps you're looking for updates from the River Forecast Center or fire weather. All of that, again, is on the left-hand side of your screen for your part of Alaska. Give us a call on the Weather Info line at 800-472-0391. Find each Weather Service office in Alaska on Twitter, NWS Alaska, to get you started. And if you like, follow NWS Anchorage, NWS Juneau, or NWS Fairbanks. Find us on Facebook under NWS Alaska and, of course, on YouTube. And many of you have seen the caribou floating down the Yukon on a sheet of ice. If you haven't seen that yet, go to YouTube and search for APRFC, or NWS APRFC, I should say, or Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, and you'll be able to watch that there or from our Facebook page. It's interesting. I'm never sure that I've seen anything like that before. The hazardous weather information right now, we're looking at red flag warnings for the eastern part of the Alaska Range and the Deltana and Tanana Flats region, thanks to a strong southerly flow that's been creating some gusty winds there. Dry conditions on the north side of the Alaska Range, whereas on the south side, of course, it's been raining, so no red flag warnings there. And a flood warning is in effect right now for Circle, thanks to an ice jam there. And it looks like that will continue to be monitored as we head into the evening and overnight hours. That's from the River Forecast Center. So red flag warnings across the eastern part of the Alaska Range, the Deltana and Tanana Flats, till about 8 o'clock tonight, and a flood warning in effect right now for Circle on the Yukon River. Here's a look at the breakup map. As of 4 o'clock, here's Circle there under a flood warning right now. And you can see, if you looked at this yesterday, a lot has changed, and a lot continues to change as more and more water across Alaska is opening up. All the areas located in white are still mostly ice, according to the legend here. And you can see a large part of the Yukon and the Tanana is now at least some open, if not mostly open there, very near Fairbanks. Now, there's many of the northern rivers have not opened up yet that we know of. A large part of the Kuskokwim, though, just about all of it, it looks like, is at least mostly open, if not some open. So a lot of improvements day to day, even hour by hour. And we appreciate your reports by giving a call or an email to the APRFC there. There's a website on your screen, weather.gov/APRFC will work as well. It helps the River Watch team across Alaska in combination with the Alaska Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, get the updates to the people that need it, like the folks in Circle there. Really appreciate the reports if you're upstream or downstream and you're noticing those ice jams. So thanks again for your information, and we hope that things continue to work out well. It does not look like this is going to be a repeat in any way of what we've seen for 2013. So some very good news there. Fire danger right now, well, with current rain going across south central Alaska, hopefully, at least for a few days or so, fire danger will be lessened somewhat, but that's not the case up there across the eastern Alaska Range. A lot of the rain hasn't made it there yet, so we're still looking at least high fire danger, and the moisture that we're seeing right now isn't a tremendous amount of rain that's really going to cut back on the fire danger that we've seen so far. Until things get greened up a little bit, fire danger is still going to be an issue. We also have some areas around the Haines-Skagway area and northward into Canada that are also looking at elevated fire danger conditions. So remember to be fire wise. Review your safety plans around your part of Alaska and for your community. And remember, it's always a good idea to make sure and then triple check that your fires are out before you leave them unattended. Here's a look at the Bering Sea satellite picture right now, and the latest circulation that we see is out across the western part of the Bering Sea and south of the Kamchatka Peninsula. The main storm pattern continues to be well south of Alaska, and any storms that do make it into the Bering are really working in a pretty strong southerly flow. That's having some pretty big impacts on the ice conditions there and rotting that back fairly quickly. A lot of water is opening up north of St. Matthew to areas south of St. Lawrence Island. We'll have an ice desk update here in just a minute. The visible satellite picture shows really the most sunny part of Alaska today. Was a little bit across central and southern parts of southeast, but really areas north of the Alaska range saw a decent amount of sunshine today. Eagle and Northway, some of those places there. We saw temperatures approaching 70 degrees. Everywhere else really covered up with an awful lot of clouds across the mainland, and under most of these clouds we were looking at least some light precipitation, which ranged from snow in the north to rainfall in the south. Had rain down in the Alaska Peninsula. Some holes in the clouds there west of Unalaska, south of St. Paul, and east of Adak and Atka. But most areas we're at least looking at some clouds, as this frontal boundary here, which you can see fairly well defined there by the edge of the clouds, was working from west to east into the mainland. The circulation down across the Gulf of Alaska bringing in a healthy dose of southerly air, southerly winds, and with warm and wet air on that, and that's what's feeding the rain across a large part of Alaska south of the Alaska Range at this point. Today's weather map shows a frontal boundary across the Alaska Range. With that, we saw some areas looking at anywhere from 0.2 to about a ½ inch of rain. Some places like King Salmon we're looking at about 0.2 of an inch of rain by late this afternoon. A 996 millibar low there across the Gulf. That will fill in a little bit as we head into tonight. Some areas across the higher terrain in the mountains and the Chugach and the Kenai Mountains will be looking at least an opportunity for some rain and snow to mix, but just about everywhere that you're talking about where folks live, the villages and communities, probably dealing with rainfall tonight. So not a major concern for any snow at low elevations. Look a little bit farther northward though, and we will be talking about some snow across the coastal plain and even into the Brooks Range. As that front marches eastward slowly, it's going to bring more clouds into parts of southeast, and with that expect rain to mainly hover just offshore of Sitka and Yakutat as we head into Wednesday. Don't be surprised if a few showers try and clip the coast. Most of the inner waterways will be looking dry, if not partly sunny at worst. And then out to the west, a new wave of warmer air works in from west to east, heading for the Pribilofs. With that comes an opportunity for some showers and low clouds. Snow showers continue across parts of Norton Sound and the Brooks Range, with high pressure trying to set up around Barrow. And as that happens on Thursday, it scoots north and east, allowing that ridge of high pressure to break open some clouds across the coastal plain. Snow showers may continue around areas south of Prudhoe Bay and Deadhorse into Arctic Village, and some light rains possible across the central and eastern interior, Northway and Eagle, and the upper Yukon Valley, with areas of rain continuing around coastal sections of the Gulf, with low pressure working very slowly eastward thanks to a ridge of high pressure over King Salmon, Bristol Bay and Dillingham and the Alaska Peninsula, holding that storm system back. So more warm air working into the west coast and the Bering Strait communities by the end of the week. Temperatures today are pretty mild across southeast again, upper 40s to upper 50s, and in places like Petersburg and down toward Annette and Ketchikan and Hyder. We're in the 50s, even mid-60s today. Around Prince William Sound, low to mid-40s. Homer was looking at 50 degrees, 46 in Anchorage after 9 days of temperatures well above the average. Anywhere from 65 to about 75 degrees from Northway to Eagle. Fairbanks was 56, Denali showing 49 late this afternoon. Fort Yukon was 50 degrees, 36 around Arctic Village, 37 for Anaktuvuk Pass. Kaktovik 33, everywhere else across the Arctic coast staying below freezing this afternoon. Upper 20s and low 30s for Kotzebue Sound, Shishmaref 28, 31 in Nome. Norton Sound temperatures generally at or just above freezing. Unalakleet at 34. 42 in McGrath. Looked like Galena was showing 47. Around Bethel it was 41 degrees today. 50 in King Salmon. 30s and 40s for the Pribilofs with a little bit of snow it looked like around St. George. Low to mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Sandpoint at 46. Kodiak not too far away. And 59 degrees around Atka this afternoon, with temperatures to the west of the front considerably colder in Chimney at 37. Overnight low temperatures in the low to mid 30s. Some places like Fairbanks could hover close to 40 degrees. South Central, upper 30s and 40s, including Kodiak. 30s and 40s for southeast, the peninsula, and the chain, generally in the upper 30s tonight. St. Lawrence Island, you're looking at 24. Nome about 20 degrees. Barrow closer to 15 with high temperatures tomorrow in the low to mid 20s for the Arctic coast. The Seward Peninsula in the upper 20s to mid 30s, including Nome at 35. Bethel 47 degrees. Bristol Bay low to mid 50s there, about the same as what you'll see in the interior, but clearly Northway and Eagle will be some of the warm spots again in the low to mid 60s. South Central will hover in the lower to mid 50s after a cool day today. Rain will gradually ease out, and upper 50s to mid 60s across southeast, with the chain and the peninsula generally below 50 degrees. Chemie, though, considerably colder, and St. Paul both at 40 degrees. Flying weather shows a wide area of IFR conditions generally around the frontal boundary across the north and western coast. Some of that may impact Kodiak tomorrow. North of the Brooks Range summits, you'll notice mainly in the central and eastern part of the chain, IFR conditions there. MVFR generally east of Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, and then west of St. Lawrence Island through the St. Matthew Island waters and hovering over the Pribilofs, IFR conditions there. Your past conditions will be a little bit different than several weeks ago when we were talking about severe clear just about everywhere. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass both expected to be IFR. Lake Clark may hover at MVFR conditions, but some improvements may be noted into the afternoon for Merrill Pass tomorrow. Rainy Pass, expect to see improving conditions throughout the day, and it looks like Windy and other passes north and eastward will be seeing some changes too. Windy Pass, MVFR conditions there. Isabel Pass, expect that to start at IFR early in the morning with some improvements noted. Mentasta Pass, we expect to see that turn over to VFR conditions. Same goes for Tanita Pass as we head into Wednesday afternoon. Portage Pass likely MVFR through most of the day, and Chilcoot and White Pass for now looking to be VFR through most of your Wednesday. The freezing levels show a lot of warm air has made its way all the way into the central and northern parts of the Yukon, with much colder air dropping in across the west. So you see that surface freezing line cutting in, closing in on southwestern Alaska now. The freezing levels south of Haida Gwaii up to 8,000 feet, and you can see some big changes out across the west as well, with that new storm working its way north and east into the Bering Sea. Icing potential, generally below 14,000 feet and above 5,000 feet. It should be fairly limited, but we have seen some isolated reports of moderate rime today, some of that across south central and the interior, and I expect a new wave of that to get a little bit closer to parts of southeast as we head into tomorrow afternoon. The main core of the jet stream is shifting somewhat. You can see several waves, one of those over the Gulf of Alaska, with wind speeds really focused on higher velocities south of that trough at 140 knots. That's heading for the west coast. We've got another low across parts of British Columbia and northwestern Canada. And the polar track here coming out of eastern sections of Russia is really holding back that severe amount of cold air. So we're not really getting a taste of that, but just a little bit of a tease working its way into the west coast at this point. At 9,000 feet, you can see a similar circulation out across the Gulf, more of a southerly flow working its way into southeast, but also notice this ridging taking place here. That's kind of holding that back for now from moving eastward into southeast with any more rainfall. Kind of a westerly, or what we call a zonal flow, working its way into the west coast and the YK Delta, and high pressure across the North Pacific, blowing in relatively light wind speeds at 15 to about 20 knots from the west. At 3,000 feet, very light winds here across the interior, only 5 to about 15 knots or so. Low pressure west of the Gulf of Anadyr also guiding in more of a westerly flow into the Bering, and more of a southerly flow still working its way up across southeastern Alaska. Generally, wind speeds pretty light across the mainland. So turbulence potential, not a mistake. There's really not a whole lot to signal any strong turbulence issues tomorrow for southeast, the interior, southwestern Alaska, or the North Slope. But if you look out to the west there, across the western Aleutians, the next storm moving in could produce some light isolated chop, maybe some moderate turbulence out around places like Shemya, and eventually areas around Kiska, generally below 8,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with a look at the ice edge and, of course, the rest of your marine weather here in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.
This is the city office. Ice is jammed about 1 mile downriver and the water is starting to come up. We'll be watching it.
Boy, there's a lot more water this morning, and the ice is really moving.
Seems to be getting a pretty dramatic movement now, and like it's going to make its push to go up.
the river. Giving, taking, changing. It provides food, serves as a highway of water in the summer and an ice road in the winter. A transportation system so people can visit and trade between communities. It provides pleasure and nurtures our spirits with its power and beauty. So we build our homes and communities as close as we can to the banks of the river. And this ensures the river a sellout audience for its greatest show of the year when it floods its banks, its most spectacular time of giving and taking. Every year, some community along the river is flooded. Ice and water damages and destroys property, injures and sometimes takes the lives of people and animals who get in its way. Millions of dollars are spent by the state in disaster relief. Roads, utilities, and community buildings damaged or lost to floodwaters. But with better planning and preparation, communities can help prevent serious damage from the flooding. Ice holds the river captive in the winter. With the coming of spring, the warmth of longer days of sun releases the snow. It turns into water, melting into the river, causing the water to rise, pushing and finally breaking the ice, jamming the river. The water backs up behind the jam, overflows the banks, and creates a flood. Sometimes the melt-off is so quick and so much, water alone can overwhelm the river into a flood without the aid of an ice jam. Different combinations of events beyond even the river's control decide whether your place or someone else's is flooded. Not even the river knows. So the best protection is always be prepared. As breakup approaches, government, schools, health facilities, and communities should get together to review flood plans. This allows everyone to be alerted to the flood danger so you can protect property and lives. Stay informed and be vigilant. Flooding is unpredictable until just a few days before it happens. Be aware it can happen any time until breakup is over. Listen to flooding information on radio and television. Be certain the community knows what to do in case of flooding. Keep children and pets away from culverts, potential flooding areas, and floodwaters. Contact an insurance agent or city official about flood insurance if you don't have it. Because of fewer state dollars, communities need to rely more on their own resources. Don't rely on state disaster relief funds to cover your losses. Before breakup, inspect flood-prone areas to make certain your home and property are not in danger. If they are, prepare them for high water or move them to high ground. Make certain important documents or valuables are also protected or moved out of danger. Shut down power plants and remove batteries from generators. Protect septic systems, wells, and fuel tanks. Shut valves to prevent spilling. Anchor fuel tanks or move them to high ground, disconnecting their manifold pipes to prevent breakage and spills when fuel tanks float.
Yeah, the last time we had a flood in '89, this 25,000-gallon tank here moved around 300-400 feet over by the post office and ended up spilling some fuel all over. So what AVEC has done is put these guy wires in, and they're anchored to a 8-foot dead man, and hopefully even in the highest water they won't move.
Be prepared to do without electricity in case floodwaters damage power systems. Keep charged batteries on hand to power portable tools, appliances, telephones, and radios. Anticipate being cut off for some days. Your airport could flood. Your home or you could be cut off from others by floodwaters. So stock up on food, water, and first aid supplies. Make certain you and your family, as well as others in the community, know where the community shelter is. Make certain backup systems work. Test them as part of your flood preparation. And be aware that others in the community may not be able to help themselves. Help them prepare and be there for them in case it does flood.
it happens a couple of times in my past time, you know. Disabled peoples and the old peoples are just unable to save their things that are in low places because other peoples in the village take care of their properties first before they take care of somebody else's property. It's very hard for elders to save their property in the low places.
And people with serious medical problems and expectant mothers should be moved to the city or a nearby village with a flood-proof airport. There's a lot that can be done to limit flood damage if these things are done. However, even more can be done if communities have long-range flood plans. This kind of planning, however, means thinking of communities differently than in the past. It wasn't long ago that Alaska's people were nomadic, traveling to hunting, fishing, and other food gathering sites with the seasons. Dwellings were temporary and portable. They were placed on the edges of rivers and other large bodies of water because it was more convenient to be near food sources like fish and transportation like a river. Dwellings and gear could be moved quickly if there was flood danger. If property was lost, the cost of replacing it wasn't a lot. Today, homes, property, and community structures cost thousands and sometimes millions of dollars. They are built to be permanent, not to be moved. So a lot of thought and planning needs to be done about where to place buildings. Where to put a building has to be balanced between the convenience of having structures and other valuable property close to river industries and subsistence sites, or risking serious damage or total destruction from floodwaters. Today, communities are investing not only money, but pride in their homes and community. Buildings need to last because they are built for many generations. They are just the beginnings of villages growing into important regional centers. They are part of the cultural heritage of today's children, passed on to tomorrow's.
And here's the latest sea ice edge across the Bering. You'll notice a lot of leads opening up there thanks to that southerly flow and a new storm that will strengthen that southerly flow, it looks like, off the YK Delta. We've got a considerable amount of open water developing outside of Norton Sound, around Norton Sound, and in Kotzebue Sound. Still quite a bit of ice, but again, it's opening up fairly quickly. Obviously no ice around Cook Inlet, and across the Arctic Ocean we're still looking at least some heavy ice concentrations there. So more to come, and we'll have a new update for you tomorrow. You can always check it out for yourself, as well as get the tools you need to make a map like this, or check out some high-resolution imagery anytime by going to weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. Now for the marine weather forecast for southeast. A south and southeasterly flow will continue across the inner waterways around 10 to 15 knots, anywhere from Skagway down through Stevens Passage, and the southern inner waterways around 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Coastal winds will run around 20 to 25 knots. More of an offshore flow, though, once you get around Icy Cape and Cape Fairweather, with an 8-foot sea expected there on Wednesday. And once you get into Thursday, expect more of that offshore flow to develop all the way down the coast, 10 to about 20 knots. More of a variable flow in the Lynn Canal. Easterlies cutting across Stevens Passage and into the Clarence and Chatham Straits. More of a southeasterly flow, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Easterlies inside Prince William Sound tomorrow, but coming down Cook Inlet, more of a north and northeasterly flow, 10 to 15 knots, and an east to northeasterly wind from Resurrection Bay all the way down toward the Barren Islands and the eastern side of Kodiak Island, 15 to about 25 knots there for Wednesday. Looking at Thursday, a variable flow in the northern end of Cook Inlet, more of a west and northwesterly flow developing across the Barren Islands with seas there between 5 and 6 feet. Inside Prince William Sound, winds diminish, seas drop down to about 2 feet, more of a northeasterly flow coming offshore there from Cordova. Northeasterlies at 20 knots with a 7-foot sea, and 6-foot seas outside of Kodiak with a 20-knot wind and 15-knot winds from the west inside of Shelikof Strait. A north and northwesterly flow coming across the Alaska Peninsula will produce 4 to 6-foot seas on the Bering side, 7 to 8-foot seas on the Pacific side. Winds there again up to 25 knots. And more of a westerly flow inside of Bristol Bay on Thursday. 5-foot seas are expected there with a northwesterly flow still on the Pacific side with 5 to 6-foot seas by Thursday. For the Aleutians, a southwesterly flow pumping more of that warmer air farther and farther north. 6 to 8 foot seas across the western part of the chain, 5 to 7 foot seas across the central and eastern sections of the chain. More of a westerly flow on the Pacific side, 15 to about 20 knots there. As we get into Thursday, the southerlies pick up a little bit more around Kiska with a 30-knot wind, 20 to 25-knot winds for the central and eastern chain north of Unalaska. That's more of a southwesterly flow, only about 15 knots with a 5-foot sea. Seas even smaller on the south side. Across the west coast, winds will be light around St. Lawrence Island. However, any open areas there, even with that light wind, could produce some freezing spray, so watch for that. A southwesterly flow west of Macoriac and south of Macoriac. You're looking at more of a northwesterly flow at 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. Around the Pribilofs, 15-knot winds with a 4-foot sea on Wednesday. That picks up a little bit more on Thursday with a 7-foot sea developing. A south and southwesterly flow into the ice there at 15 to 20 knots there. In the sea ice-free areas, 2-foot seas are expected there around St. Lawrence Island, still with the threat of freezing spray. And across the Arctic coast, winds should be pretty light across the Beaufort Seacoast and the Chukchi Seacoast, only running around 10 knots or so for Wednesday. As we get into Thursday, the winds may pick up a little bit more, blowing offshore from the south and east, from Cape Lisburne all the way down to Point Hope and into Kotzebue Sound, 15 knots there, and an onshore flow, though light, will be blowing into Prudhoe Bay, Dead Horse, and Kaktovik at about 10 knots. That's your marine weather forecast. Now for a recap of what's going on around Alaska tonight and tomorrow. Low pressure across the western Gulf will spin more wet weather up across south central. Rain will gradually subside to more of a scattering of showers across south central and over the lower terrain where most of us are living. You're dealing with mostly liquid precipitation, but at the tops of the mountains, don't be surprised to run into a little bit of a rain and snow mix. Now, north of the Alaska Range, there's a chance for some snow. Most of that will maintain itself across some of the higher terrain there, but don't be surprised to see at least a little bit of snow. And some rain moving in towards Sitka, Yakutat. Most of that holds out of the majority of southeast. While in the west, a new storm system coming into the western Bering will be adding some more heat to the west coast. Gradually, a south and southwesterly flow is developing again, and that will chew up the ice even more as we head into Wednesday and Thursday. Snow showers continue in the north, while rain continues across the Alaska Range, Prince William Sound, and Kodiak Island. Most of southeast should be dry as we head into Wednesday afternoon, and things will gradually change as we head into Thursday with an opportunity for some wetter and cloudier weather heading toward the latter part of the week. While rain subsides in south central, rain may pop up for areas around Eagle and Northway, and more rain develops out across the western part of the chain. I'm Dave Snider. Thanks for watching Alaska.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.